Howdy neighbor, how is your garden growing? Today we're going to be talking about what to plant in May, from your vegetable garden to tropical plants to what native plants may be in bloom. In addition, I'm going to talk you through tips and things to think about as you go through the month of May so that you can keep your garden looking its best or let it go a little bit wild. And as always, I'm going to be using my handy dandy 2023 Wild Floridian garden planner. Exciting news for our garden planner is that we were able to figure out a new way to do printing and shipping costs so that we could bring it down pretty dramatically. So if you've been thinking about grabbing a garden planner but the price was a little too high, go and check out the new pricing at www.wildfloridian.net/planner. So let's talk about what we should be planting in our Florida vegetable garden month by month for the month of May. And when it comes to vegetables, we're definitely out of cold weather crops. We are out of warm weather crops, and we really need to be thinking all about our hot weather crops. So that means we need to be thinking about Seminole pumpkin, loofah, roselle, okra, and of course, sweet potatoes, which is one of my favorite, and I would say one of the easiest to get started. And that brings me to one of my first tips about why warm weather crops, you really shouldn't be starting them right now. The fact is it's getting hot. But it's not just that it's getting hot, because a lot of our warm weather crops can take heat, and you may even find like heat tolerant varieties. But what a lot of Floridians don't consider, which is what is the UV index for the month, and basically how intense is the sun? And when it comes to the sun in the month of May, is we are getting to some of our most intense sun for the year, because this is the difference that makes the difference. If you've tried heat tolerant plants before and you found that they failed, this is probably one of the biggest reasons why. Because when we look at the weather throughout the year for Florida, especially once we hit our warm and hot months, the lows and the highs aren't that dramatically different from a temperature standpoint. But when it comes to the UV index, it is extremely different. And if you move from places up north like Chicago or the Midwest or New York in the Northeast, you basically max out your UV index at somewhere around 9. But here in Florida, we average a UV index of 9. And right now in the month of May, we are hitting UV index up in the level of 11. That's why you're gonna see a lot of your warm weather crops or even heat tolerant crops are gonna start failing on you because the sun intensity is just getting too strong for them. But you're in luck if you have these in containers. You may be able to move them into shadier locations to help them be able to continue and finish their production of your crop. But one of your other options, if you can't move it, like you have an in-ground area, is you can consider using things like shade cloth. Now you don't need it at the very beginning of May, but I would definitely consider investing it so that you have it in time, so that as we head to the end of May, and especially as we go into June, you're prepared to be able to give shelter to your plants so that they don't have to deal with, you know, the intense sun. Now, what about all these hot weather crops? Are they going to be able to handle that sun intensity? Well, plants like these sweet potatoes will do completely fine in that full intense sun. They may not like it at the hottest time of the year, but for the month of May, they're going to be thriving. So it's a great time to either get seeds going or grab some transplants or get your starts going. And when it comes to things like Seminole pumpkins and the sun intensity, they're going to do great in May, and they'll probably do pretty well in June. Where I started to see them struggle a little bit is once we got into our really intense sun and heat months like July and August. But what's really cool about Seminole pumpkins is they will root all along their nodes, and they may look really stressed out at times with like leaves looking like this, but they can bounce back once the weather shifts. These ones have been going since the end of 2021 and they're still going. And if this is going to be your first year growing Seminole pumpkins, or you've tried growing them before and you have questions, definitely leave them down in the comments below. I'm going to be doing a video really soon answering all your questions about Seminole pumpkin. Now you may be wondering, where should I get seeds for these hot weather crops? Now there are a couple that you may be able to find at places like Home Depot and Lowe's. I found things like Clemson spineless okra from there. I've also found loofah packets from time to time, but I haven't ever found anything like when it comes to our Seminole pumpkins or roselle seeds. Now that brings me to one of the places that is pretty consistent in having seed packets that will work for you, especially when it comes from hot weather crops. I have found things from okra to different bean types to, of course, Seminole pumpkins, and I just picked up a whole bunch of packets of roselle because I want a lot of it this year. So this is an online resource. I have no affiliation with them, but they have been really consistent and really good, and I know a lot of Floridians have found success with seed packets from Southern Exposure. Now let's talk tropical plants and tropical food forest type crops, and we need to talk about plants like banana, which it's a great time of year if you're considering going and buying a banana plant and getting it started. This would be one of the months to start doing that. This here is one of my favorite varieties for growing here. It's called a Grand Nain. Grand Nains are great because they taste a lot like Cavendish. And if you're not familiar with banana varieties, don't worry. Cavendish is basically, that's the banana you get at the grocery store. But what's great about Grand Nain is it stays much more compact. These plants only get, well, the proper plant only gets about 7 feet tall, with the leaves getting up into the 10-foot region. What I also like about grandades is that they are really good about putting out significant bunches multiple times through the year. So I often off of one plant get 2 or 3 bunches. And if you want to learn way more about bananas, I will link a series of videos for you to go and watch so you can learn all the basics to growing bananas here in Florida. Next on our list for tropical plants that you should be thinking about adding to your garden is papaya. Papaya is an amazingly easy plant to grow. It looks like a tree, but it technically isn't. You're gonna get a ton of fruit from just one plant. Oftentimes they say you can get anywhere from 40 to 60 pounds per plant per year. I have gotten up to 100 pounds from one single plant. So consider getting something like a papaya. And they are really, really easy to start. You just go buy a papaya from the store, take the seeds out, and bam, you can start a whole bunch of papaya plants. And if you want to learn more about papayas, I will link a series of videos at the end of this video so that you can learn how to grow papaya. Well, we are deep within my mini food forest, and this comes to my third recommendation for tropical plants for this month, and it's going to be mulberry. My mulberry trees are, or I guess large mulberry bushes, are jam-packed with berries. Ben and I are out here every day, if not every other day, pulling in about half a pound to a pound of mulberries. There's so many mulberries. There are more mulberries than we could possibly even collect in a day. So much so that the birds have been loving hanging out here, which is great because from a wildlife perspective, a lot of our birds are having their fledglings starting to leave the nest. Fledgling is just basically the stage in a bird's life when it starts to leave the nest, but mom and dad often feed them. So it's really helpful to have things like berries around for mom and dad to eat while they collect tons and tons of bugs for their babies. And if you want to learn a lot about mulberries, I will also link a playlist at the end so that you can learn about mulberries. They are super easy to get started, and while you might not get your first harvest this year, you will definitely be getting your harvest next year. There have been so many amazing flowers in bloom this month, and a couple of exotic ones that, while they are not technically native, they are definitely Florida friendly, and they put out such a beautiful smell. And that's gonna be jasmine, aka star jasmine, and of course gardenias. If you're not familiar with gardenias, you may be if you walk through neighborhoods and you just smell this beautiful scent. Oftentimes it's because one of your neighbors has a gardenia, even if you don't see it. That's one of the things I love about my neighborhood is so many neighbors have gardenia someplace in their yard. So as we're walking around right now, just the air is just filled with perfume, and it is so pretty. I love gardenias because they actually can kind of look to me, they look to me like roses, but they aren't. And they're not going to be as fussy as a rose would be here in Florida. These are great if you live down in zone 10s and zone 11s. Consider getting yourself a gardenia. So pretty. Smells so good, and they are so beautiful, and they actually like more tropical weather and acidic soil, which Florida has a lot of that. So get yourself some gardenias. I love the scent of gardenias. You can actually collect the flowers and just place them in a cup of water inside of your house, and they'll continue to release that smell so that your house will smell just as pretty as the outdoors. And while you may be really excited about jasmine and gardenia, about bringing scent, but you're still looking to go native, one of the new ones that I'm finding that adds a really pretty scent, works in shade, and attracts pollinators and feeds birds is shiny coffee. Shiny wild coffee is an amazing plant that I have really appreciated adding to this section of my garden. We have been starting to pull in bees, and it is actually bringing its own beautiful scent. It's not as prolific as I would say gardenia or jasmine is, but it still is adding a lovely scent to the area. So if you're looking to go native and have some beautiful scent and also work in a shady location, shiny wild coffee may be for you. Now, when it comes to our native wildflowers, so many are blue, especially a lot of our yellow flowers, from Coreopsis leavenworthii to starry rosinwheat. Narrowleaf Yellowtop has just started to come into bloom. Our dune sunflowers have been blooming. A lot of yellow. So if you've been looking to add yellow to your garden, these would be, oh, even goldenrod. I have some of my sweet goldenrod and seaside goldenrod are all blooming. So a lot of my yellow wildflowers have really started going. But if you're looking to get pink, this has been the first month that this one has really been going, and that is sunshine mimosa. You've seen it behind me in some of the latest videos. You'll probably have noticed sunshine mimosa has been blooming a lot. It's this pink little powder puff, which is a ground cover alternative. This is a great companion plant to have around a lot of your edible plants, which is why I put it in my vegetable garden and near my banana plants, because sunshine mimosa puts roots 3 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet down. So it is great at pulling nutrition up, but also holding moisture for plants so that as we head in our drought seasons, they're gonna help them get through it. So consider adding sunshine mimosa if you have a food forest area, or if you're looking to bring in large bees like bumblebees and carpenter bees. These are going to be what help you go increase your Seminole pumpkin harvest. So putting these and pairing them together may be a really nice way to keep grass out, keep weeds out, but also increase your Seminole pumpkin harvest. And if you're looking to get into our native wildflowers and have constant blooms that attract bees and butterflies, well, the Wild Floridian planner is for you. It has a lot of focus on things that can attract different types of wildlife to your garden, plus let you know what should be in bloom each month so that you can have constant color, constant flowers, and constant food for our wildlife. So check it out at www.wildfloridian.net/planner. Another tip is consider putting a lot of your native plants, whether it's going to be sunshine mimosa, Stokes aster, salt and pepper, or one of the many other plants that I've given you guys tips on before, put them in spaces near your vegetable garden because they will help feed wildlife. And when you're helping wildlife, wildlife will often help you. One of the things I've really seen pick up this month is a lot of our songbirds are using these trellises and hanging out here. They dive down here, grab some bugs, hang out here, but then they jump on over to my vegetables and start picking away at some of the bugs that might take out a little bit of my crop. And some exciting news, we've actually seen a really big change in the amount of wildlife. We've been getting ducks in our yard, which is crazy because we don't live near water. Even to the point where we actually got a mama duck with a lot of baby ducks coming through our yard. And one of the main reasons is those ducks are hanging out with my native wildflowers. Now, that doesn't have any specific benefit for things like your vegetable garden or your food forest, but if we're trying to do things in an environmentally and eco-friendly way, we want to have places for our wildlife and have food for them too. So consider adding a lot of these native plants to help wildlife. Well, I'm gonna go grab some food so that I can use it for some of the dishes we're making this week. But I'd love to hear from you. What have you been harvesting and what have been some of your most successful crops this last month? And what are you getting planted so that you can beat the heat when it comes to the summer? And if you really want to get into tropicals, go ahead and check out this series of videos on bananas, this series on papayas, and this one on mulberries to get you started. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.